For more analysis on China's commitment to developing countries, we're joined live in New York by CCTV's Nathan King at the UN headquarters. Nathan.
Susan, it's quite a list, isn't it? And China's actually pledging about $30 billion overall in the lifespan of these goals. They're saying they're putting justice ahead of national interest to try and lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty towards development. These targets for 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, are ambitious. They range from everything from climate change to sustainable economic growth. Let's see what it's all about. China's President Xi Jinping meets with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon a set of new goals for the globe. Access to clean water, electricity, gender equality, combating climate change. 17 goals and 169 specific targets. Critics say it can't be done. China says it's ready and has pledged an initial investment of $2 billion.
The post-2015 development agenda is a high-standard list of deliverables that carries with it our solemn commitment. It is often said that the worst of any plan is in its implementation. I therefore call on the international community to redouble their collective efforts for the joint implementation of the post-2015 development agenda.
To meet the social development goals, officials say rapid economic growth needs to be coupled with less consumption of fossil fuels, more investment in infrastructure, and fresh ideas on development. China is making specific pledges to make this happen. The initial $2 billion to help poor countries will increase to $12 billion by 2030. Beijing also announced that it would forgive loans owed to China this year by least developed indebted nations.
As the developing countries continue to gain strength, we have every reason to believe South-South cooperation will contribute ever more of developing countries to the strong, sustained balance and inclusive growth of the world economy.
The ambitious targets apply to all nations and call on rich countries to reduce income inequality, increase employment, and properly manage the world's oceans. Yeah, the UN says that for these sustainable development goals to be met in just 15 years, that the international community is going to have to pump about $3 trillion into this effort. And China's commitments aside, this is going to require massive global financing, but also political will on a scale that we don't often see here at the United Nations and, of course, across the globe. Susan?
Nathan, what is next on the agenda?
Well, it's going to be a really busy week. President Xi Jinping actually addresses a gender equality women's forum on Sunday, which is pretty poignant considering 20 years ago there was a landmark women's conference in Beijing, China, which really set out goals for gender equality going forward. So it'll be really interesting that he's chairing that and charting progress going forward. But all eyes are on Monday here, where President Xi Jinping gives his first speech to the UN General Assembly. It's going to be a very high-profile speech on an extremely high-profile day. Not only will he be addressing the General Assembly, but also US President Barack Obama, Russian President Vladimir Putin. We're also going to see President Rouhani from Iran, as well as Raul Castro as well. So quite an amazing array of world leaders giving their visions, differing visions, on how the 21st century global architecture should be shaped.
A poignant moment. Thank you for that. Nathan King joining us live from the UN.